So exactly. So they got kind of the old timey wrapper and $100,000. What does that mean to kids now? If you rebrand it for crypto, now if it's 20.7 Ethereum bar or 1.43 Bitcoin bar, it's flying off the shelves.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into Monkey Knife Bites College Football Show. I'm Dan Watkins. Joining me, as always, is the great John McKechnie of Rotowire.com. John, week 9, here we are, a monster of a weekend coming up. Pardon the pun. You got 3 top 25 matchups, and of course, Halloween. So first things first, what's your costume?
So I'm going to be Burt Reynolds from the film Smokey and the Bandit because I figure I already have the mustache built in. Like, there's not that much effort required other than that. And also it gives me free reign to just drink Coors Banquet beer all evening. And like that makes it look more authentic. So really it's the perfect costume for me.
I absolutely love that. I ordered a Spencer Rattler jersey. I'm going to wear it around Sunday. And if anybody asks me what my costume is, I'm just going to say a disappointment.
Zombie Spencer Rattler, there's a lot of directions you can take that one in, but I think that riding the disappointment train, that's a good start for sure.
Absolutely. So you got costumes, you got candy, we got football, everything we love. Just about the fall is all in one weekend here this weekend. So one coach over last week during week 8 he went viral for some of his candy takes. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. So stick with us. We're going to break down some games first, then we're going to pause and do a little candy discussion and kind of break down this video because I thought it was just absolutely wild what happened last week after one of these games. So let's get right into these matchups though, John. We have a top 10 matchup in the Big Ten. Number 6, Michigan heading to number 8, Michigan State. This game in East Lansing this weekend. That's a noon kickoff on Fox. Big brother, little brother, all the storylines. The first time that these two schools have met when each of them are in the top 10 since I think 1964 or 65, somewhere in there. So been a long time coming for that one. And I feel like this matchup, we'll talk about the quarterbacks here quickly, but it's more about the running backs in this one. But let's quickly talk about these quarterbacks here. Cade McNamara, 170.5 is his more or less. He's thrown for more than 171 yards in 3 out of 7 games. But you look at his attempts since starting the Big Ten play, they've gone up. So they've kind of trusted him a little bit more. And I'm not really counting that Rutgers game there. But Michigan State, it feels like this is the weekend, right? That they're going to try to make Michigan beat them through the air, even though Michigan State's pass defense, not that great. So how do you feel about Cade McNamara this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because of, like you said, the way that Michigan has attacked teams mostly. They've been a very, very ground-heavy team. I think that they rank in the top 10 in run play rate, or if not top 10, they're very close to it. And this will be a competitive game. So I think that they won't be in a situation where Michigan State is up by a lot and they need to abandon the run, anything like that. To your point, Michigan State is very gettable through the air, so it's a question of whether Michigan really wants to explore that. They have some guys on offense as far as the receiving core is concerned. So Michigan State giving up 270 passing yards per game, you could see a way that it ends up going that way. And McNamara, of course, you're not asking a ton out of him, just 170. But even still, I think that this ends up being a close game, and I think they want to shield McNamara from making the killer mistake. I don't think they're going to have him turn it loose all that much, and I think that Michigan State will be able to keep a lid on it. Again, they're going to be focused on stopping that run. We'll get to those running backs, but I still think, all told, this is just one of those classic Big Ten slugfests where we're not seeing a lot of yardage on either side. And for this particular one with McNamara, I would take the less than 170.5.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's something to keep an eye on, that Michigan State defense. I think they're ranked 120th in the country against the pass, which is just terrible. Adrian Martinez and De'Ara King were both able to have good days against them, but like you mentioned there, I feel like they're going to be a little bit more locked in here with Michigan coming to town this weekend. So Peyton Thorne on the other side, Michigan State's quarterback, 235.5 is his more or less. He's thrown for that number in 4 of 7 games so far this season, but he did struggle last week or 2 weeks ago now against a decent Indiana defense. Michigan ranks in the top 20 in pass defense, giving up just 182 yards a game. And those 3 games, for Peyton Thorne with less than 235 passing yards, all Big Ten games. And I'm not including the Rutgers one in this one either, because I'm not taking Rutgers seriously. I'm sorry. No offense to you Rutgers fans out there. So John, how do you like Peyton Thorne?
So with Thorne, you got the 235 number. It's tough because, again, like you said, Michigan really, really tough against the pass. I think Michigan's really tough against the run too. It's not just a one or the other type of thing with them. They're going to be really, really difficult for Michigan State to deal with all day long in both facets of their offense. I do kind of tend to think that Thorne will be able to hit the more on 235. I know that he, again, like you mentioned, hasn't performed all that well against some of their tougher competition. It is at home, and despite the time of year, I don't think that weather's going to play a factor. So the conditions will allow Michigan State to throw the ball. And they've got guys like Jaden Reed and Jalen Naylor, two really explosive guys. I mean, Reed, someone who can get 20 yards a catch. So I think that level of explosiveness kind of leads me to think that the Michigan State will need to try Michigan through the air a little bit more. So I would take the more on Thorne. I think that Michigan State a little bit more comfortable turning it over to their quarterback and letting him run that offense.
Well, let's talk about Michigan State's running back, the number two rusher in the country, Kenneth Walker III. 92.5 is his more or less. He's rushed for over 93 yards in 4 of 7 games this year. Michigan's run defense is almost just as good as their pass. They're 24th in the nation against the run, allowing just 116 rushing yards a game. And depending on the sports book you look at, you can see that Kenneth Walker is like right around that like 6th when it comes to odds for the Heisman right now. He's been having a very good season so far, coming off this bye, so he's got some fresh legs this week. Can he get to 93 yards?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to go with less here, and it's something that again jives with what I was saying about Peyton Thorne. I think that Michigan, they know that like priority number one is taking Kenneth Walker out of this. If you just continue to hit him at the line, if you keep turning his runs into negative gains, which I think that Michigan does have the front to do so, I think that we start to see Michigan State try to skew things a little bit more towards the pass here. So I think that Michigan State's going to have a really tough time generating that sledding on the ground that they have, throughout the course of the season for the most part. So I know that Walker's been that secret sauce for the Michigan State offense this year, but I think Michigan knows that, and I think that he's the guy that they've had circled as the one to slow down for this game. That's priority number one for them. So I think that Walker ends up having a disappointing game, and I will take the less.
All right. And then on the other side, you got Blake Corum. 96.5 is his total this week on MKF. He's rushed for more than 97 yards in 4 of 7 games, but this Michigan State defense is pretty good against the run as well, allowing just around 130 yards per game on the ground. What do you expect his usage to be this week? Because Hassan Haskins has had more carries in each of the last 3 games. He actually has more rushing attempts this season than Corum, but Corum has run for 120 more yards than Haskins. So how do you feel this game flow is going to go for Blake Corum?
Yeah, if I'm a Michigan fan, I'm frustrated that the workload split has been like that, because Corum has been the more effective runner on a per carry basis this year. Haskins is a good player, but I think Corum is, one of the better running backs in the Big Ten. So when you look at that 96 number, I'm just concerned because of the workload split. I do believe that Haskins is going to be on the field a lot. I think that we're going to see him, push for 15 plus carries. And I know that he can do that, and there's still enough room for Corum to produce here. But if there is a strength to Michigan State's defense, it is against the run. I think that they are going to load up to stop the run as well, because McNamara is really, really shaky through the air. So I believe that Corum will have a pretty decent day as far as per carry numbers are concerned, but in the end, I don't know that he has the volume. And I see this game being a pretty quick one as far as a lot of clock running. We're not going to see a ton of plays run. So all of that combined, I will take the less on Corum.
You are all geared up for a classic Big Ten showdown. I love it.
Sure am.
Absolutely love it. So last question about this game I have for you is more total points scored between Michigan State and Michigan, or Ohio State by themselves against Penn State?
Ooh, great question. Give me Ohio State. They're going to baptize Penn State on national TV on Saturday night. It's going to be bad.
I completely agree, and we'll We'll get to that game in just a little bit, but let's head over to the SEC now. The world's largest cocktail party is what it used to be known as. I don't even know what they call it anymore, but you got number one in the nation, Georgia, taking on Florida at 3:30 in Jacksonville. You got to pause for a second, though, and talk about tailgates again. Last week, you told us that the proper base to have for a college football tailgate is Chick-fil-A. So this week, what's the proper drink of choice?
So with this being the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, this is one that's near and dear to my heart. When you're a student at Georgia, this is basically your Super Bowl. They give you fall break, they give you the Friday off. So all the students are skipping class right now as we speak, and getting down to St. Simon's, this island off of South Georgia. They're all going to party their faces off tomorrow on what's called Frat Beach. Everyone's in Halloween costumes. It's literally the most absurd thing you've ever seen. But then, if you're in good enough shape to go to the game the next day, then you head on over to Jacksonville. You grab a charter bus, something like that. No driving, absolutely no driving involved. But you get there. If you get there early, this game is always at 3:30. So that I feel like your mimosa, Bloody Mary type stuff, that I think that's out the window at that point, and you're going with a pretty, down the middle mixed drink, some sort of I prefer a whiskey ginger if I'm tailgating. That's kind of my vibe. But whiskey Coke is perfectly acceptable as well. Rum and Coke, I trust those people a little bit less, but that's fine enough as it is. But any bourbon based cocktail or mixed drink, I think is going to get you in the right frame of mind to watch Georgia and Florida play each other.
I love it. I mean, for me, with tailgates, I'm going light beer. Any tailgate, I'm going with some sort of light beer. But at this one, since we're doing cocktails, I'm going with a Tito's and soda. Just let it flow. Just let it flow.
There it is.
Just let it go. And here we go. So JT Daniels is expected to be the quarterback for Georgia this weekend. No limitations according to Kirby Smart this week. JT's number on MKF is 251.5. Florida has a good pass defense, 197 yards per game. Bryce Young, the Heisman frontrunner, along with Matt Corral, Young finishing with just 233 yards through the air in that wild game with Florida about a month ago. This Florida run defense is a different story. They're allowing about 140 a game on the ground. So I feel like Georgia is going to run the ball, especially with JT Daniels, who we don't really know what he's going to be this weekend. He's only played in 3 games so far this season. How do you feel?
Right. So this is kind of the number daring you to make a declaration as to whether you think JT Daniels is even playing all 4 quarters, let alone playing. And then, how does Georgia decide to attack this Florida defense? But I tend to think that JT Daniels, when he's out there, this offense is way more explosive and they're way more inclined to go to the air. I know, like you said, that Florida has that pass defense personnel that is a little bit trickier to figure out than say what the run defense is. Obviously, Tyrion Davis-Price from LSU setting the LSU single game record. Brian Robinson running all over them for Bama a while back. So does Georgia opt to protect JT Daniels? Do they let him drop back enough and throw? I actually tend to believe that yes, they will. I think that this is going to be sort of an unleashing of JT Daniels. I mean, he's been sidelined since, I believe, the Vanderbilt game in late September. It's been the Stetson Bennett show. Georgia's been on the bye this past week. I think Daniels, if he's ready to go, he's going to play all 4 quarters. And I think that the efficiency is going to be there, the explosive plays. I think Georgia's getting healthier in the receiving core as well. Jermaine Burton, I think, is going to play a little bit more. Arian Smith might be able to play. He can stretch the field. Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint. So they have a bunch of guys that they've been missing on the offensive side, in addition to Daniels, that I think are going to be playing this week. And I think that a fully loaded Georgia offense ends up getting over 249.5 passing yards on Florida.
All right. So I feel like you're just expecting Georgia to go in there and just completely flex their muscles all over Florida on this one.
I think that Florida will be able to provide more of a punch on offense than they've seen to this point. But I just also think that people are sleeping on Georgia's offense. And again, like they've been shorthanded. They've been working with Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett's done very well, but again, the limitations of Kearis Jackson, they don't have George Pickens still, Arian Smith, Jermaine Burton, all those guys. Like if they're all back and then you also have Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington, that's so much to contend with. And that's not even mentioning like a James Cook as a pass catching option out of the backfield. So that's that's such a loaded group of skill guys that I think that Georgia will be able to not name their score, but I think that they will be able to score comfortably into the 30s.
Well, let's talk about who's got to get those skill players to football, and that'd be Florida's quarterbacks. Dan Mullen this week saying we'll play a quarterback, kind of taking what the Florida State coach said before the opener against Notre Dame. So I don't know what's going on with those Florida head coaches stealing from each other, but there's this. So
something in the water.
Yeah. For our purposes, we have Emory Jones on MKF at 166.5. He's thrown for more than 167 in 4 of 7 games. And then there was another one where he finished with 161 against LSU, which I think he got pulled at some point in that game too, as well, where he kind of had like a late first half drive, which made up a lot of those yards. But Anthony Richardson, we know, is a factor here. We probably will see him at some point in this game. So can Jones get to 166 against this Georgia pass defense, which is allowing just 144 yards per game?
So whereas there's the question baked in with Daniels as far as his passing yardage total, you have to kind of expect that he's going to go 4 quarters for him to hit that. Jones, similar deal, just going up against this Georgia defense, and Florida doesn't really have particularly impressive skill talent. Certainly a drop off from where they've been the last couple of years. And I think, unlike Georgia, where I expect Daniels to be playing the vast majority of this game, I think Florida does go with kind of a true quarterback rotation here. So I think that really cuts into Emory Jones's attempt projection. And if that's in play, you can't expect him to be particularly efficient with those attempts just based on what Georgia's been able to do defensively this year. So I think we're going to see a healthy amount of Anthony Richardson. He's kind of like that wild X factor for this entire game. He's so athletic. I mean, you're talking about 6'4", 230 that can move like that. Florida would be crazy to not at least see what he can do against this Georgia defense to kind of shake things up. And mobile quarterbacks, athletic quarterbacks like him have given Kirby Smart defenses trouble in the past. So I think that's going to lead to Jones being on the sideline a little bit more this time around this week. And I will take the less for Jones.
I agree with you there, but let's talk about one of these Georgia running backs, and that'd be Zamir White. 74.5 is more or less. And I looked at this one, I'm thinking, okay, they're kind of daring us to just bet against this Florida run defense, which has not been very good, as White has only gone over 75 yards one time this season. He did have another game against Clemson where he finished with 74, but can he get to 75 against Florida on Saturday?
Yes, this is Zamir White week. This is a game that's a huge spot for him. You look at the rest of that running back personnel, and I think part of the reason why White hasn't had particularly impressive box scores is because they like to, rotate those backs, whether it's James Cook, whether it's Kendall Milton, whether it's Kenny McIntosh. McIntosh coming off an injury, James Cook is still a factor, but Kendall Milton's out, and he's their kind of other between the tackles guy. So Zamir White gets all of that work this week, and I think all of that against this Florida run defense that we've been trashing this entire time, I think that we see Zamir White see 20 plus carries and clear this number with ease.
I'm just going to point out here, our executive producer, Jay Rubin, is telling me that typical UGA grad has gone with more on all the Georgia players and less on the one UF guy. So
no biases here.
But I mean, I'm just a straight analyst here, man, just right down the middle.
All right. So while we're talking about the SEC, let's pause for a minute and talk about a certain coach in the western part of that conference, and that would be Mike Leach. After his Mississippi State Bulldogs put an absolute beat down on Vanderbilt, 45-6 last Saturday, he gets interviewed about candy corn because apparently they're talking about how Mike Leach just hates candy corn during the broadcast. So I think we have the sound here if we could pull it up and play it. But yeah, so here's Mike Leach.
We talked about on the broadcast how you hate candy corn. What's your favorite Halloween
candy corn? I mean, I completely hate candy corn. When I was a kid, gummy bears.
All right. So as you heard there, Coach Leach just absolutely dumping on candy corn. I think he put up a graphic in the middle of this week. There it is. How to eat candy corn. Step 1, open bag. Step 2, throw in the trash. And step 3, grab some Reese's peanut butter cups. Very good here. But I want to talk about Coach's his preferred candy here, John. So he goes with gummy bears, sprees, and Nerds Clusters for his 3 favorite candies. And then he goes with Almond Joy for his favorite chocolate, just to throw a little variety in there. One about Leach. So I absolutely love his candy corn take. Couldn't agree more. It's trash. Throw it out. Don't even show it to me. I don't want to see it. It's just foul. All right. It's like every year it's like, all right, let's try to see if it somehow got better this year. You taste one and it's still just as bad. And then my other thing though with Leach, where this is a 60-year-old man saying how much he loves gummy bears and nerds. I hate nerds. Nerd clusters suck. I almost choked to death once on a container of nerds. You used to get those tiny little ones that were like the Halloween ones. I dumped the entire thing. Yeah, I dumped the entire thing in my mouth when I was like 9. We were riding in the car somewhere. My mom had to pull over and like basically perform the Heimlich on me on the side of the road because I was choking on nerds. So I hate nerds. I think that's a terrible take by Mike Leach. Give me the chocolate. Save the gummy crap. I don't know about you.
I think first of all, that just message on this show slash to J Rubin. We just need the cut up of Dan just going, I hate nerds. First of all, that's just like good, useful stuff for whenever. But I don't necessarily, I consider it year round candy, but Haribo gummy bears, I do believe that Mike Leach is right. And we had an interaction on Twitter this week, pointing to a famous Amazon reviews. Yep. For the record, those are sugar-free gummy bears. So use those if you're not trying to enjoy candy, but don't use them if you're getting on a transatlantic flight. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go on and just Google sugar-free gummy bear reviews, and you'll find out quickly what I'm talking about. But I'd say as far as my top tier candy for Halloween is concerned, it starts and ends with Reese's. I know that's kind of the stock answer, but they're just impossible to beat, whether it's in cup form, whether it's in mini cup form. If you get the pumpkin shaped ones, tremendous, even a little bit better on the peanut butter ratio. So like, I'm all about that. And I was thinking about this last night when I was getting prepped up for the show, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. I think one of the more slept on Halloween candies, one that I think carries kind of an old person feel to it that I think could use a rebrand. And I think I have an easy way of rebranding it. What are your thoughts on 100 grand bars?
Sneaky good. Like right. You never like I never think, if I'm choosing and trying to figure out what kind of candy I want, 100 grand never comes to mind, but it's there and you have one. I just did last week. Someone at work had like a little candy jar on their desk, and I took a 100 grand bar. I'm like, all right, sure. I forgot how good they are. They are actually very good, but I would never think to go have one.
So exactly. So they got kind of the old timey wrapper and 100 grand. What does that mean to kids now? If you rebrand it for crypto, now if it's 20.7 Ethereum bar or 1.43 Bitcoin bar, it's flying off the shelves. So that's just free advising from your pal John here to Nestle, but get it done. You're sitting on a gold mine there in crypto candy, basically. And I think that I would like to see 100 grand bar get more shine. And I think going into the crypto space is how it's done.
I love it. Get that idea to Tom Brady. He's pushing the Bitcoin stuff all over the place.
That's right.
Might be able to help us out there.
Dogecoin bar. Yeah. I mean, there's so many of them.
Absolutely. But if I'm just going to round out some of my favorites, peanut M&Ms are my preferred. I love Twix, Milky Way, Three Musketeers, and the Reese's, of course, is number 1, but those are my top 5. So that was good. That was a good breather there in the middle of our football show. Let's get back to the good stuff here and talk a little Ole Miss, Auburn. Number 10, Ole Miss going into Auburn on Saturday night at 7:00. Auburn's ranked number 18th in the country. This kind of feels like this is the second place battle in the SEC West behind Alabama. Maybe even one of these teams, Auburn, could somehow still play their way into the championship game if Bama slips up again, I guess. Same with Ole Miss. Either one of these teams could if Bama slips up again. But anyways, Matt Corral, 244.5 is his more or less. And at first glance, I thought, wow, that is a low number. But he's been held underneath 235 passing yards quite a bit here. Each of the last 2 games he's played, he's been hit a lot, sacked 8 times in the last 2 weeks, and we know he's banged up. And this Auburn pass defense allowing just 217 yards per game through the air. And also another thing with Corral here, the injuries have limited his running ability, just 24 yards on the ground for Corral against LSU. So does this game being in Auburn sway your opinion on Matt Corral, where the 2 road games for him, he has not been great so far against Tennessee and Alabama? What do you think of this 244 number?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think you bring up some great details as far as his recent performances go. And if you watch the LSU game last week, he's getting tossed around like a rag doll, and it's just like, man, that's really not ideal. Given that he was really shaky to even play as of earlier last week, so you don't love that detail of it. So you know that they're going to be leaning a little bit more on your Jerry and Ely's, your Snoop Connors, your Henry Parishes out of that backfield, and they also have a really banged up group of pass catchers as well. They've been missing, I believe, Jonathan Mingo for quite some time. Braylon Sanders a little bit dinged up, so he's just not working with that A group of Rebels receivers that we saw lighting up the SEC earlier this year. It's on the road. I mean, dare we ask the question, is Auburn good? I mean, I think it's possible. And like you said, they control their own destiny right now. This game obviously goes a long way towards really determining that and solidifying that. But long-winded answer short, I'm on the less for Corral, even though it's real tempting at 244. I just think that there's just enough to where Ole Miss trusts its run and the passing game depth that they have is just not what it was.
Yep, it feels like if Ole Miss is going to win this weekend, this is going to be a game where they're going to have to just survive by any means necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that through the air against this Auburn defense. So on the other side, you got Bo Nix, and his number this week is 223.5. He's been more than 224 in just 3 of 7 games. This Ole Miss passing defense is nothing special. They're giving up about 241 yards per game through the air. But here's my deal with Bo Nix. I think he is the most frustrating player in college football. There's times he looks really good, like 2 weeks ago against Arkansas, where he's completing 80% of his passes, throwing for almost 300 yards. Or you have late in the game against LSU, where he leads that final drive, or against Penn State, where he leads them down to the goal line, but then they can't punch it in. And then there's also times where it's ugly with him, like the Georgia State game where he goes 13 of 27 for 156, or the first 3 quarters of that Penn State game. So it's really, which Bo Nix do we get this week? And also, I think another thing to play in here is Ole Miss's run defense is just not that good, where Auburn might be able to run the ball down their throat Saturday night. So how do you feel about 223 for Bo Nix?
Yeah, like you said, you could put any number next to Bo Nix's name, and I would just like take a second, like, have to like pat my head to like think about how it's going to be done, because I could believe any sort of outcome when it comes to Nix. I am a little bit more optimistic about him with him being at home. I know that Ole Miss tries to load up to stop the pass. Auburn doesn't really have that much as well as far as like scary pass catchers are concerned. So I think that they try to focus a little bit more on slowing that Auburn run game, slowing Tank Bigsby and company. And I think that could open up some big shots. It's just a matter of those Auburn receivers actually catching the ball as opposed to dropping it like they always seem to do. But 223 is a relatively low number. I know that Nix can flirt with that number on a given week. I think the fact that it's at home, and I just think that Nix eye test, he can there's some weeks there where he actually looks like the guy that Auburn fans tend to think that he is. So I think that this is the week where it comes out, and I think he hits them more.
All right. I'll take your word for it, because like I said, I don't know what to expect with him.
Can't even.
And, I think this game being in Auburn is a huge factor for him. So I'll go with more there. Last up here, we have another Big Ten matchup, as we hinted at earlier. Ohio State, Penn State. At the time of recording this show, we don't have the numbers up yet for MKF. So, John, why don't we try to guess the lines here for Sean Clifford and CJ Stroud? So let's talk about Sean Clifford here, who apparently he is good to go. Ohio State's pass defense has been giving up 230 passing yards per game, but they seem to be getting better as of late. And then this team as well there, I don't like Penn State at all this weekend. I think they're completely distracted from the top on down. James Franklin said he's focusing on watching tapes of Illinois, who they played last week. He says, then he later in the same press conference says they're preparing to go to the big house. That's Michigan, not Ohio State. So I just think they're completely distracted. I mean, the USC job apparently is like right in Franklin's hands if he wants it. Apparently that's what people are saying. So, and then the last time in Columbus for Clifford as well, 10 of 17 for 71 yards. So I don't think Clifford's going to have a good day at all, but I'm guessing his number on MKF is going to be somewhere around like 230 is going to be my guess.
I might guess even lower, but I'm similarly pessimistic when it comes to Clifford. I wouldn't be shocked if it's at like 185 or less. It really wouldn't shock me. It just Penn State's offense it's so much less than the sum of its parts. They just can't seem to get it going. I mean, the game against Illinois I thought was embarrassing, and then you have to watch the end of it just because you're watching something so novel as a 9 overtime thriller, I suppose it was. If you just sort of a rock fight, but either way, I don't think that this ends well for Penn State. So I'm going to guess it's somewhere in the 180s, and it would have to be in the 170s, I think, for me to be even considering the more when it comes to Clifford.
All right. Yep. So we're both down on Penn State and Sean Clifford. CJ Stroud, on the other hand, the Buckeyes are cooking right now, and Stroud is a big reason why, if not the reason why. CJ is just he's just throwing the ball all over the place as of late. He's got 2 games with over 400 yards this season, another where he's over 330, and then another close to 300. But last week against a tougher Indiana defense, he finishes with just 266. Although Ohio State, they dropped 54 in that game, and he ends up, sitting out most of the fourth quarter in that one. So I'm expecting big things from CJ Stroud. If that number is even close to 300, let's say it's like 297.5, I'm still going more. I think until this number gets into like the 320s, does it bother me? Would I go less? I really like CJ Stroud and the Buckeyes to just absolutely destroy Penn State this week.
Yep, I think you have it absolutely right. I think that Stroud and this Ohio State offense is going to get what it wants at any time. And, if Penn State for a second, takes its eyes off of the Ohio State passing game of Stroud, Olave, Garrett Wilson, TreVeyon Henderson is a man. For a freshman, it's just ridiculous what that guy's doing already. I mean, I think he's probably the second best running back in the country behind Bijan Robinson. I think this Ohio State team is the second best team in the country, just period. So I think that Stroud's going to be able to do what he wants through the air against Penn State. I think that this game gets away from Penn State, and Ohio State just kind of puts tries to make a statement win, because they haven't really had that just yet, and they're at home. So I think you're right in the sense that 320, it has to go that high for me to start thinking about the less for Stroud, because if anything under that, anything at 300 into the 3 teens, I'm taking the more, and I feel pretty good about it.
All right. Very good. And then any other plays you really like this week, John? Who's your lock, your mortal lock, whatever you want to call it, your pick of the week?
I will take the less on Washington State's Jaden DeLora. I think that Washington State is just kind of in disarray right now. They got to go on the road to face, I think, one of the best, if not the best, defenses in the Pac-12 in Arizona State. Even with the kind of way that Washington State runs their offense, where DeLora, you figure he's going to throw a lot of passes. I think they're in for a long game on Saturday night, and I think DeLora really is the face of that. So I will take the less than 236.5 on DeLora.
All right. And I really like the more for Bijan Robinson this weekend, more than 121.5 against Baylor. Bijan's been over 225 rushing yards in each of the last 5 games. Baylor's run defense just okay. Their one loss this season was to Oklahoma State, who ran the ball 54 times, including 36 carries for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns for Jalen Warren. And then you got Texas, who just desperately needs a win. The best way to do that, get back to their strength, and that's feeding Bijan Robinson the rock. So I like that a lot this week.
Absolutely. Never a wrong time to bet on Bijan.
All right. All right, John, where can they follow you?
You can find me on Twitter at Johns_tailgate. You can find my college football stuff over at rotowire.com/cfootball and check out the Rotowire College Football Podcast, which is anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
All right. You can follow me at Dan Watkins Radio. Thanks, guys, for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Tell all your friends to do it as well. Have a great Halloween, and enjoy Week 9 of college football.
Bye.